Hello, and thanks for joining us here in our learning, whether you're joining us through the LA Tikkun incredible program in which there's over 200, at least in the opening plenary, there were over 200 screens, which means potentially, 400 or 500 participants from all throughout the city that have joined together for this night of learning. It's such an extraordinary gift that I think these uncertain times and really the sadness of our isolation has prompted these wonderful new opportunities where we've gathered together. And if you've been like I have, just kind of tuning in since 6 o'clock, I've also been hearing from colleagues and teachers, great teachers from all around the country, from New York and Atlanta and Chicago. And it's just a great way to experience the revelation of Torah tonight. And it's a privilege to enter into this little space and to learn a little Torah with you. So I welcome you. And we're going to be studying some text tonight, and we'll have a little bit of discussion. And in order to kind of frame it, I think it's something that we're all really beginning to experience, whether it makes you anxious or whether you feel a civic duty or whether you do so begrudgingly. We all have to wear masks, and we're out and about in our world. And as the world is slowly beginning to open up, and who knows what the next few months are going to look like, but one thing is for sure, at least according to all of the indications, that if you're in any public space to wear a mask, that is actually a very effective way to not only keep yourself healthy, not only to indicate to people around you that you're conscientious of your health, and perhaps if they weren't being aware, that they could be conscious of that. But it really is this kind of, it's a new sort of social experience. And to give you a perfect example of this, so I did a great thing this week. I kind of like did my mitzvah of the week, and there was some groceries that needed to be delivered from one of the local kind of food distribution organizations. So I arrived at the place, and there we were standing at the picnic tables about to pick up all of our bags and to distribute them into our cars and then go deliver them to the people in the area. And somebody pulled out a camera, and we all had our masks on. And what do you do when you normally look at a camera? I mean, you could be from some old European country when you didn't smile because you had to wait for an hour for the flash to actually materialize so that the image could be imprinted upon the ink or whatever it was that they used to do in early photography. But nowadays, when somebody pulls out a camera, it's kind of customary to smile. So you're wearing a mask and you're smiling. Who sees what you're doing? And we laughed because, and somebody's usually you say cheese so that somebody can at least show their facial expression if they're not naturally a smiler. Well, what does it matter if you're wearing a mask? Because there's nothing to be seen. Maybe at best, it could be the sort of the appearance of your eyes. But I think the reality, this is just sort of a sweet example. We laughed and chuckled about it because it is going to be more and more of our reality when we're in public spaces and we're talking about gathering together, and we're talking about what is it going to mean to be seen and to see others. This mask that we wear physically is going to somehow mitigate that those cues that we have customarily used to understand who stands before us or how we might present ourselves before the people that we meet. And it's a reality, but there's more to it. There's much more to it because I think, these recent months, if you've participated in one Zoom session before tonight, you're fully aware that background matters. And there are lots of interesting people that you encounter in their homes. And meeting people in their homes means meeting everything in their home. And sometimes you're interested, well, what do they have on their walls? Or what's that in their kitchen sink? Right? What did they have for dinner? And there's a curiosity about trying to see the person before you and knowing that sometimes you're distracted by the materiality of how someone presents themselves. So what I wanted to do tonight is I wanted to take that idea further, because I think it's going to be something that we'll be certainly reacting to, responding to, and creating a new sense of normalcy in the coming months. I don't anticipate that we'll be wearing masks in our public spaces forever, but I think that this is one of those moments in which there's going to be an indelible imprint upon our being and how we present ourselves, and what is it that we radiate, and how can we communicate when we don't have all of our perhaps physical faculties available to us. Or even deeper, if those physical appearances don't matter as much as they used to, then what is it that you are looking for when you see someone else? And what does it mean to be seen by someone else when maybe they're not so concerned about the things that we used to be so concerned about, because we're all masked up. So that was kind of the overview and introduction to our text tonight. And I want to introduce it. I'm going to put the text on the screen. And I want to say that I think the core of mediating between being seen and seeing is this idea of friendship. And I want to share a poem from a recent writer. Here it comes. And let me see if I can get this looking bigger for everyone. Oop. Hold on a second. Okay. Oop, that might be too big. All right, can I get a thumbs up? Does that look good for everybody? Yes, thumbs up? Wonderful. Okay. So let's read this poem. This is from an English poet, a modern English poet. His name is David Whyte. And he writes friendship, okay? Friendship. Friendship is a mirror to presence and a testament to forgiveness. Friendship not only helps us see ourselves through another's eyes, but can be sustained over the years only with someone who has repeatedly forgiven us for our trespasses, as we must find it in ourselves to forgive them in turn. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight, a companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs. When we are under the strange illusion, we do not need them. An undercurrent of real friendship is a blessing exactly because its elemental form is rediscovered again and again through understanding and mercy. All friendships of any length are based on a continued mutual forgiveness. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. So first, as much as that, I hope you found that moving, and the words themselves, if you're interested, we'll be able to post them and they'll be available for you after the class, or you can search up David Whyte and read some of his poetry. But what I really liked about this definition and what it really means to be a friend is something that I think we can spend a little bit more time focusing on. It's perhaps one of the great gifts that this period of isolation, of retraction from the world, is enabling us to spend a little bit more time thinking about and contemplating. Not only was it sort of the going through the lists of people in your phone contacts and checking in with them, if you were able to do that, or just knowing like who are the circles of care and concern that you have been focused on in these past months, because those are people that matter to you, and that people that you matter to, and to know that that you're maintaining contact with them even in this separation is one of the great demonstrations of friendship. But even more so, what I loved about this reading is that friendship is about forgiveness and tolerance. And I think that those are some things that we can really practice in these coming days and months, especially as we're getting a little bit itchy about being in our present circumstances and our condition. And the idea that friendship is not just something that you merely express with people that you're familiar with, or perhaps the people that you live with in your home, or the people that you've had history with and you've maintained connections for a lifetime even. But that friendships are also those that are struck even on the street, and the kindness that we can share to each other, especially in this sort of transition and uncertain time, is something that is built on forgiveness and tolerance. Actually, you know this for yourselves and your experience. How many times that you've been in places where you could have held somebody to the fire when they did something that perhaps was hurtful to you, but it was through your tolerance of forgiveness that you were able to see them and to recognize that the sincerity of their recognition that what they had done was harmful was something to forgive and then to move on and to build a deeper loving connection with. So I want you to hold on to that, because I want you to hold on just to the feeling. For the next few minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to be taking journeys through text, because it's Shavuot and we're going to study some Torah. And what I wanted to do is I want you to see that one of the sort of fundamental underlying purposes of the Torah is exactly this. It is to create that kind of qualitative connection between each other in such a way that we can call as many people our friends. I think, think of Psalm 137, Hine ma tovu ma na'im, shevet achim gam yachad, how wonderful it is for friends to be together, right? Like that is sort of an idyllic view of human experience, is friendship. So let's go into the Torah, because seeing and being seen is the first step of that friendship quality. In other words, there's people that you see all the time. And, I find myself to be a sensitive personality. And so I take in a lot of people and bodies moving. And it's something that sort of affects me. And I'm excited by the encounters. But not all of these people are my friends, nor do they have to be. Like the person sitting at the streetlight, it doesn't have to be my friend. It's okay. But, we happen to be driving in the same direction. So that might have been an indication that friendship was possible between us. But I think that, we recognize that there's sort of limitations of our circles of people that we call real friends. And I think the Torah teaches us about this. So take a look. So this is one of the first great texts that talks about seeing. And it's about appearance, and it comes with God appearing to Abraham. Actually, this is right after he circumcises himself, and the covenant is extended between them, between God and Abraham. And so as you read, the Lord appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw three men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, "My lords, if it please you, do not go past your servant." So I want you to just pay close attention, at least in the English, or if you could see it in Hebrew, the word vayera, but in English it's appeared, and it says, as soon as he saw them, he saw. There's three examples of seeing in this text. So the first one is that God appears and Abraham sees. This is a wonderful comment that came out of the rabbinic tradition. Actually, they have a question. What did Abraham really see? What does it mean that God appeared to Abraham in this moment? Is it there was some apparition? Was Abraham actually seeing God? Or was Abraham having a vision? Was Avram seeing something that wasn't perceived by the eyes per se, but was perhaps, a mental or an emotional connection? And they play with this knowing full well that the previous verses were that he was healing from his circumcision. Remember, he wasn't a young guy when he did that to himself. And so he probably took a few days of recovery. So while he's recovering, God appears to him. And it could have been in a kind of a dream, a kind of vision, but the idea of appearance in that moment isn't ocular. It's not a visual perception. It's a kind of internal perception. And we could ask the question, what did Avram see? The only thing that helps us is what happens in the rest of the text. As soon as he saw, it says, looking up, he saw three men standing near them. It could be that this verse is qualifying the previous one. In other words, God appeared to Avram in the form of three men, which is one of the great classic interpretations here. And as soon as Abraham sees them, even though he's healing from his circumcision, he gets up, he runs out of his tent, he becomes the quintessential host, and he greets these people in his tent with food and with good cheer. So the first kind of seeing is that God appears. It's being seen is by God here. And to be seen by God, at least according to what the Torah is trying to teach us, is that one appears with a certain kind of purpose, right? The appearance, if you wanted to read the text, the appearance is that God appears to us through people with purpose. These weren't just three random people wandering in the desert. They actually had a very specific purpose, and there's lots of interpretation about what that is in the verses that follow. But the idea that God's appearance to us, what we see, isn't the shape and form, the embodiment of God, but it's actually the purpose that we as human beings embody from that God imperative, or that sort of sense of holy connection, kiddushah, whatever words that you want to use to describe that sacred encounter. So let me stop right there. Any comments, or is everybody doing okay so far? We're kind of moving along on our text. If anybody wants to add a comment, I'm just happy to participate in the conversation. This is what we'll do. I'm going to share the text, and if you have anything to add, feel free to do so as we move along.
Do you want me to unmute them, or do you want to?
If somebody's raising their hand, I can't see everybody from the way that I've got my screen. So if somebody has something to say, go ahead, raise your hand or comment. But if everybody's good, we'll go on. So far, so good. I hope you're eager to learn more, because there's lots more to share. Okay. All right. So let's go. Let's go now, and now we're going to go to the second text. And just mind you, if you are unmuted, please mute yourself again, and we'll pick you up when you want to speak after the next text. Okay. So.
One second. One second, Rabbi. I muted everyone. I have to unmute you. One second.
I'm okay. I got you.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, everybody's okay? Thanks. No worries, Alana. Hi, everybody. Alana Zimmerman. Give her a round of applause. She never knew that she was going to be a TV producer in all of the great, amazing. She has a master's degree in education, right? She is now also a TV producer. Thank you for doing that. So in the second text, right, this is also a very popular text. This is the one where after the golden calf, Moses turns to God and says these words. So I have the Hebrew, but I'll read the English. So God said to Moses, this is after the destruction of the first 10 tablets of the 10 Commandments, and Moses is coming back and says, don't destroy them. So God says to Moses, I will also do this thing that you've asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name. He, that is Moses, said, oh, let me behold your presence. In other words, let me see you. The words in Hebrew are hareini na et kvodecha. Ro'eh, the word in Hebrew is see. And as we've, if you wanted to play with the text, the last text was a different kind of see. It's not a seeing with your vision per se, but it's a seeing that has a quality, an internal quality. Okay, Moses wants to see God. And God answered, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you the name Lord, and the grace that I grant and the compassion that I show. But, God said, you cannot see my face, for a person cannot see me and live. And the Lord said, see, there's a place near me. Station yourself on the rock, and as my presence passes by, I'll put a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I pass by. Then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. So in this second example from our text, we have a different kind of encounter, right? We have Moses actually seeing some kind of form of God, right? It says, you will see my back, but you're not going to see, you'll see my essence. You'll see kind of like something of me, but you're not going to see me, because you can't see me, because no human being can see me, whatever that is, and live. So since That is the understanding of the relationship between God and humanity, that we can't see God. We don't have the capacity, whether it's a biological or an evolutionary capacity, to use our vision to see God, but we can perceive God's essence by our experience or by some kind of relational encounter. That kind of seeing is what really is sort of one of the quintessential moments of the Torah. Right, you have this first great moment of God and Avram being together in the desert as God appears to him, and he appears in the form of these three men or angels. And then you have this other great pinnacle moment when Moses and God are back up on the mountain, and the commandments are being given to Moshe, and Moshe says, "Let me see you," and God says, "You can't see me, but you can see my essence." So the question is, what did he see? Right? What does he see? What is it to see God's essence? Based on these two texts so far, what is it in the Torah that is teaching us what it means to see? You might have thought that sight was based on some of the other texts that we have, which are, if you see a person who is breaking the law, you have a responsibility, if you're a witness, to testify against them. Or if you see a person causing harm, like putting a stumbling block before the blind, you have an obligation to speak out against that injustice. Those are things that you perceive in perhaps in physical being, or take the example of Moses, right? Moses sees the Egyptian fighting against each other, and he takes it and he beats it, the Egyptian beating the Israelite slave, and Moses kills the Egyptian because of what he sees. He sees it with his eyes, but what he sees internally is an act of injustice. You can't see injustice. And anybody who knows what's happening in the news today, this is just like horrendous. It's a horrendous act of injustice, as we're hearing about the police officers that killed this man while trying to detain him. That's the world that we're living in when you don't see the essence of people. This is the challenge that I think is being presented. And I think the idea is, for us to see God, right? Like that's what our purpose is, at least as Jews, but definitely as human beings. And it's our responsibility as the harbingers of that truth to stand up and speak out when necessary. Any comments with that, or everybody still doing okay? All right, hold on to that. Hold on to that. There's one more from the Torah before we get into a couple more texts, okay? So now, another pinnacle moment is the one that we are celebrating right now. This is the text that we'll be reading in the synagogue as we perform the rituals celebrating the Shavuot holiday. And the text that we literally read is from the Book of Deuteronomy. And here, look at what it says, okay? I see Alan, I'll call you in just a second, okay? Thank you. I see the note, and let me just read this and then I'll call you. 3 times a year, on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Pesach, on the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, and on the Feast of Booths, Sukkot, all your males, all your people shall appear before the Lord your God in the place that God will choose. They shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed, but each with his own gift, according to the blessing that the Lord your God has bestowed upon you. So now this is a time when the people are appearing before God. So up until this moment, we had God appearing before Moses. We had Moses looking to see God, and I guess then God sort of responding to the appearance, or maybe if you wanted to reinterpret that, Moses being the one who is appearing before God, being worthy of seeing God's presence. And now you have the people, you have an entire collective, you have the nation of Israel appearing to be seen before God. And God, in response to their gifts that they're coming at these 3 times a year, is going to be accepting their blessings. So these are kind of 3 biblical models of what it means to see and be seen. Let me stop. So there was a hand raised from Alan. Go ahead, Alan, unmute yourself and please comment away. Alan, I'm going to unmute you. Go for it.
Okay, well, it was actually his wife, Sharon, but I'm on his computer.
Oh, hi, Sharon. Nice to meet you.
So Yeah, I was just back on the idea of seeing God's back, and also God like putting his hand over and or the rock so he could be passed by, and he doesn't want to see his face. And I was just thinking about how what's the word, anthropomorphized, like how human, like humans features. So like just sort of wondering, like whenever I thought about it before, I thought, okay, the back doesn't have that incredible intense energy that the face has. But if we're talking about God, why are we talking about God's face and his back and his hands? So it's just like I just thought, just when you were talking about it, it came up that what is that? Like, what is that? Like, how are we're reducing God in a way to what we can see as humans?
Thank you, Sharon, for sharing that. I appreciate it. And it's a great point, right? So if you, the point is that when you read the Torah text on the surface, it feels like maybe we want to humanize the experience and encounter of seeing. And since we humans know sight better by the face, and certainly we can attain the features of another being by its face. The idea that God does not show God's face to Moshe in that moment seems like maybe it's just a very like simplistic understanding of what God looks like. So one thing I wanted to invite you to consider is that this isn't really a simplistic understanding. It's all the hiding and the sort of protection isn't in some way to hide God's face from Moshe, but it's really, as I had made in that previous comment, it really is Moshe being worthy of seeing the presence of God. And I think that's the same thing with us as human beings, right? Like what we're seeing right now, just to sort of contemporize it, right? When we put a mask over ourselves, it limits our ability to interpret the expressions of the person sitting before us in a very real way. And that is in some way kind of like the hand, if you will, of God's presence, being limited to Moses. And what I think was being taught here is that Moses to see as much of God as he's capable of seeing is what God is mediating. And so that we're reading that interpretation. By the way, this is a record of the experience that's only between Moses and God. Who's telling the story in that moment, right? Is Moses telling the story? Is God telling the story? Because that could change the whole understanding of it. But let me just sort of leave it with this as we come back into some of the other texts, right? Is that that when we're talking about the Torah and being seen, what we're trying to convey is not something that is based on perception alone. And that the more that we can expand our understanding that the bodies that we see, the materiality that we see might be narrative explanations. It might be wonderful decorations to people. The reality of what we're seeing is the essence of each other. And what I think that we're trying to get through in these texts, and we'll see it as we move a little bit further in the text, when we have that essence of each other, then we see, as I've been trying to explain, we see the other as our friend. The last comment about this as well is that God does show God's face, or we pray for God to show God's face to us. Whenever we do the priestly blessing and when we bless our children at Shabbat, and we say, Yisa Adonai panav elecha, may lift God's face upon us, right? It's a prayer. We hope that God's face will appear to us. And how do we know that it's possible? When we see it in the eyes of those we bless. So let's hold on to that. So Joe wrote a question about feeling God rather than seeing God, but God could see us, right? I want us to go further because I think feeling is also, like, feeling is a sense. I think there's something transcendent that we're talking about. It's not only seeing like an intellectual interpretation of our sight. It's not only a feeling like an emotive experience, but it's a transcendent kind of like thinking, feeling, being. I want to call it a being kind of experience. Okay. Thank you for your comments so far. Let's move on because I would love to get to you some more text before we conclude. Okay. So now this is from the rabbinic period. This is another really famous text, one of my favorites. Okay. So in English, the sages taught in a Tosefta, one who sees multitudes of Israel recites, blessed, praised are you, Baruch atah Adonai, who knows all secrets. Okay? In other words, this is coming out of a litany from the Talmudic text, which is, what do you do when you see this? What blessing do you say? And there's all kinds of blessings that are recited for a whole bunch of reasons and circumstances. When you see a huge crowds of people, right, which by the way, we are not seeing huge crowds of people because of our present moment. But so maybe when we see each other again, the blessing that we should recite is, who knows all secrets. Why is this? One sees a whole nation whose minds are unlike each other and whose faces are unlike each other. And he, that is capital H, that would be God, who, or capital W, who knows all secrets, God, knows what is in each of their hearts. The Gemara relates, Ben Zoma, who's one of the early rabbis, once saw a multitude of Israel while standing on the stair on a temple mount. He immediately recited, praise who knows all secrets, and he added a second blessing, blessed who created all these to serve me. He's not arrogant. Don't take this as a blessing of hubris. He's noting something so very profound. First thing is, when you see a group of people, to be able to recite a blessing that each and every individual that you encounter is unique, is something extraordinary, and it's extraordinarily difficult. Just think about being at Dodger Stadium, right? And nothing is more exciting than being at Dodger Stadium for me, a baseball fan, and not yet being able to do that summer, and having 50,000 people, mostly dressed in blue and white, with all kinds of funny fingers pointed in the air, and everybody's chanting and cheering in one voice. And in one moment, you feel like we're all in this together. And that's the power of the community, the collective. But the Talmud and the Torah is teaching us that in order for you to see even that multitude, the blessing you recite is to know that only God knows the secrets that exist in each and every one of those people. And how wonderfully sensitive it is for you to be a personality who walks into a Dodger Stadium moment, right? And you can recognize that people from all over the 10 million residents of the greater Los Angeles area, representing all different kinds of walks of life, are coming together with all different stories. And they're not your story. That is a way of seeing other people. And then, of course, the challenge behind that is, can you be seen by them with that same spirit? Can you be seen in such a way that people recognize you for your uniqueness? Which is why I think Ben Zoma makes the second blessing. And thank God that all of these serve me, right? Means that I am seen by them, right? It's the pinnacle of humility to say that I am as honest as a person as I can be, and I am showing myself without any masks that people can see me for who I am. And that is a great truth as well. Let's go on. And now, this is a wonderful text from Pirkei to Rabbi Eliezer. It's also back in, okay? So, pardon the translation here. Rabbi Yehuda said, when a man speaks with his companion, he hears the sound of his voice, but he does not see any light with it. The Israelites heard the voice of the Holy One, blessed be he, on Mount Sinai, and saw the voice going forth from the mouth of the Almighty in the lightning and the thunder, as it is said, and all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings. Okay? When a person speaks with a friend, they hear the sound of the voice, but they don't see any light with it. That's wonderful, right? But when Bnei Yisrael saw God speaking, right? They saw God speaking through the thunder and the lightning. They saw and they heard. Okay? It's an interesting text about Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. And it's what distinguishes perhaps seeing God and being seen by God a little differently than we see each other. Because there's something about this incredible capacity of multiple senses being activated simultaneously when we are seeing and we're hearing the spoken word, all of the senses, the touch, that encounter. As many of those senses are a part of your encounter, that's what it means to be seen. And Bnei Yisrael, the sort of like gift of revelation, was that they were exposed to this. Because under normal circumstances, we're just walking down the street and we only hear other people's voices, or we like sense their presence because they're walking away, or we hear them like chatting on a phone with a different conversation. We are perceiving them for what they put out, but we're not perceiving them for what they possess. And that's what I think I'm starting to get out of these texts, is that you see from Abraham to Moses to the people of Israel to the multitudes that we see to encountering God at Mount Sinai. You see this wonderful journey coming together, which is that to see is not only to see purpose, it's not only to see essence, it's not only to be worthy of being seen by how you present yourself and what you bring that makes you worthy of being seen, but it's also ultimately it's about being able to see so much more of the other than what your first impression is. That's what it means to see and be seen. I want to show you one last text, and then take some responses and bring us to conclusion. This is a little fun. It's from Marvin Gaye. So go ahead and YouTube this. It's a very short song. It's about 1 minute and 50 seconds. And I digested it. It's actually a very religious song. He includes, when he says that God is my friend, he's talking about Jesus. And so despite that, I want you to hear what he says. All he, that is God, asks of us is we give each other love. For God to be our friend, all we have to do is give each other love. Oh yeah. Love your mother, she bore you. Love your father, he works for you. Love your sister, she's good to you. Love your brother, your brother. Don't go and talk about my father. He is good to us. And just, I won't even attempt to sing like Marvin Gaye, but I am going to encourage you to go find him on YouTube. It's a really great song. What if the first idea that we shared, right, that friendship is about tolerance and forgiveness, and it's about not only people celebrating us in our triumphs, but actually being present with us in our vulnerabilities and everything that defines the people that are most precious to us, who care for us, and not because we make them laugh or because we give them stuff or because there's some utilitarian value that we provide for them. But actually the friendship is in that wonderful exchange that they have this ability to forgive us and to welcome us, and we have the ability to forgive them and welcome them. What if we were to make God like that? What would it look like? For real? What would it take to be worthy of calling God your friend? I think it begins with seeing and knowing that what you see in others is something that is transcendent, something that is beyond the materiality of the person that's appearing in the screen before you. And I think it's something also about being seen. And it's knowing that when you dress up, and these days I could show you the second half of my screen, and which I'm sure you're all curious at. Is he wearing a suit? I'm not wearing a suit. and And you know that, like, you know, what we put and what masks we wear and what appearance we put out in the world, that somehow is a way that we communicate how we want people to see us. But that isn't being seen. That's actually like trying to manipulate the situation. But being seen is about being open enough, being yourself as much, being your soul as much, so that when people see you and your soul, they're willing to embrace it for all of its foibles and for all of its triumphs, for all of its weaknesses and for all of its strengths, and to be a loving friend. And to finally be able to do that with what we call God, however you want to define that, that's what revelation is. So on this holiday of Shavuot, when we're experiencing revelation, it's not only about great wisdom that is being emanated from the screens and from great teachers that you'll encounter throughout the evening, but it really is this preparation for you being open to seeing and being seen for the best that you have to offer the world, your soul, your radiant and perfect, pure soul. I want to wish everyone a Chag Sameach at that. I want to take any more comments. So first of all, Ami writes, perhaps we are not alone, and we are supported and seen by God, and we are assured of God's friendship as a friend, and that when there's darkness, we're alone. Right. So it's yes and, right? Like if we feel loneliness, right? And loneliness is not being in the presence of people, right? It's actually like the Mayor Soloveitchik, the Joseph Soloveitchik's idea of the lonely man of faith, right? We have plenty of people, but my existential journey seems solitary. And in those moments, it's what we come to define as God, and God as a partner, God as a friend along the journey that helps us know that that our faith is true, or that our faith has potential. So it's a really nice comment. Josh wrote, we as humans are taught visual pattern recognition from a young age in school and work as a way to stay safe, like driving cues. Sometimes this works against us, and we immediately try to categorize a person or a being based on those visual cues. Perhaps the essence of God is that we can't use those visual cues to be blinded by our own visual bias when we're trying to connect with God. It's wonderfully put, right? That's another way of looking at it, right? It's essential for the human being, for those who are blessed with sight, which is the majority of us, right? There are those who don't have visual sight. And to know that they're also able to develop many of these cues of seeing, perception with other senses, that those can also be blinding as well. And so what this is all teaching us is that the journey that's taking place here, the sort of encounter of seeing and being seen, has nothing to do with visual sight or sensory sight. And that's what I was trying to respond to Joe. It's a transcendent kind of quality of being in the presence. And when that presence happens, that's when you know that you've really encountered something powerful and true. Thank you, Ilana. And it's 10 o'clock, my friends. So I wish you happy journeys through all of your studies. Thanks for learning with me. It was great to see you. Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom. As we share, there's lots and lots of learning continuing on in Valley Beth Shalom. There's all kinds of opportunities through the VBS at Home website. I know that for those who were in Rabbi Farkas's class last hour, he teaches on Tuesday nights. I teach on Thursday nights. I'll be starting a class called Prayer Mastery, and we're doing the teaching all throughout the days, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in those future encounters. So, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Alana Zimmerman, for helping us. And our next class begins in about 15 minutes.